Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very spooky edition of the It's Always Sunny in Phoenix podcast. Today's Halloween, and tweet at us your costumes. Oh, wait, what's that? It's February? Oh, never mind. I'm just ahead of myself. But, this brings up something that I want to talk about right off the bat. Everyone talks about last-minute Halloween costumes, but I legitimately want to hear from our fans. You can tweet at us at Sunny in PHX Pod and tell us if you are someone who plans way ahead for their Halloween costumes. That's something that sounds very interesting to me. So, I'm Mitch, by the way, and I'm joined by David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I've actually been thinking about my Halloween costume, and I have an idea if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
My idea is actually to dress up as Roger Goodell,
Oh, okay.
because I think that's the scariest thing like possible. Like maybe with like a Patriots cap that says like I'm the worst or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most scariest thing I can come up with.
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. We might actually need to pause the show so I can cry for a while. That's really scary.
Maybe you can come cry on my shoulder.
Yeah, maybe one day. So the other thought I had is, speaking of Halloween costumes and all of that, one really exciting costume that I know if I had a trick-or-treater show up to my door wearing this costume, I'd give them probably more than candy. I might give them money, maybe cook them a warm meal. If someone came up dressed as a Sunny and PHX Pod fan, I mean, I would be elated. And a way that you can do that is you can go to tpublic.com/user/sunnyandphx and get yourself a t-shirt or probably a hoodie, since it gets a little colder in October. So for anyone who's planning their 8 months out, a little over 8 months away, anyone who plans that far out, go ahead. I mean, you'll have it by then for sure. So I'd be really excited to see that, I will say. You can also follow us on social media and tweet at us when your shirt arrives and all of that. We're Phoenix Suns multiple sources on Facebook. Our Twitter, again, is at Sunny and PHX Pod. Our email is sunnyandphxpod@gmail.com. All that good stuff. So today, we're going to change things up quite a bit. There was some exciting Phoenix Suns stuff, like Devin Booker making a last-second shot to beat the Kings. But we're going to talk about the Super Bowl today. We can't not talk about this. So I just want to hear your thoughts overall first, David.
I was feeling really good about the Super Bowl heading into halftime. I was finishing up some wings. I was finishing up some pretzel bites. There was a tri-tip that my pops had just finished cooking. I was really excited. I was feeling good. The Falcons were up 21-3. Or hold on, the team from Atlanta, just so that way we don't get any issues because of, how crazy the National Football League is sometimes about some of their marketing or franchises or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, I was feeling pretty good, and then it all went downhill, and it ended how I expected it to end. For feeling so good at about halftime, there was just something lingering in there where I was like, that evil man in the cut-up hoodie is going to ruin my happiness. And that's what happened. And I'm not even an Atlanta fan.
Yeah, no, I'm not either, and I was feeling the same way. Just pure rage. And that cut-up hoodie, it's like, who does Bill Belichick think he is? Like some 20-year-old on steroids who goes to the gym and just like shows off, doesn't really work out, just takes like Instagram pictures wearing that hoodie thing.
I think it's all about Snapchat these days, Mitch, so you're already
Snapchat.
showing your age.
I'm on that Snapchat grind. Excuse you.
Yeah, there's something about that hoodie combination and that look of a grumpy old man that he's not even I don't even think he's old enough to have that grumpy old man stare because he's had it for like 20 years. So that's kind of infuriating. And I mean, you shouldn't be allowed to be as good looking and have as good looking of a wife and have as good looking of children as Tom Brady. It's just not fair.
I completely agree. Like, he doesn't deserve it, but he has it all.
Like he might kind of deserve it, but it's still not
Mm,
fair to have the looks, the money, the skill, the UGG contract. I mean, like it's just not fair.
okay, David is on the Patriots bandwagon. That's official.
Oh, I'm on the UGG bandwagon, but not the
Oh,
Patriots
oh,
one.
okay.
Hey
Well,
man,
that's fair.
UGG,
Anyway,
UGG
yeah,
boots are fantastic. I don't care what anyone says. Those things are great.
I've never worn them, and I don't care to, but I'll take your word for it. Well, I mean, I was feeling the same way as you. At halftime, I was like, the Falcons got this. I was telling people, it's so great to see Brady get demolished like this. I'm loving it. You know, going to McDonald's, telling people that, going, ba da ba ba
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
ba. Yeah. I hope that lines up in post, so whoever edits this, just make sure it does that.
Well,
And
if we know
throw in a
one
little
thing, if I'm the
harmony.
one editing it, it won't get lined up.
But yeah, anyway, I was feeling so good, and I kind of stepped away for a little bit. I had other things to do, and I just thought, yeah, they'll be fine. And then they decided to pull a Warriors and let the Patriots right back in. And when the game went into overtime, which, okay, the one cool thing about this game is that it was the first ever overtime Super Bowl. That's pretty cool. But I just said whoever wins this coin toss is going to score on their first possession, score a touchdown, and they're going to win and it'll be over. And that's what happened. So,
Yeah, I feel like the overtime rule should be different in a Super Bowl. Like
yes, I
specifically.
think so too. Like, and I'm trying to equate it to basketball. Like, this is the equivalent of a buzzer beater, but I don't think that gives it quite enough weight. Like, scoring a touchdown to win the Super Bowl in overtime is like the equivalent of one shot that's taken like a minute into overtime that automatically wins all 7 games of a series.
Well, yeah, like I was thinking of like a shootout in hockey, but
Yeah.
like if
Uh-huh.
only one team got to actually go to the shootout, and then
Right.
like if he
Right.
missed, then the other team got to like shoot it. But like if he made it, then it was just over.
That's a good analogy too. And speaking of hockey, if you want some very high quality entertainment and some good laughs, check out the R Hockey subreddit, and their Super Bowl thread is great every year. It's always really funny. It usually gets more attention than the R NFL Super Bowl thread. So yeah, check that out. It's really funny.
I mean, like the RNFL one gets a lot of. There was something like 15,000 upvotes for the one thread. I mean, it gets a decent amount of attention.
Oh yeah. Oh, it gets a lot, but the hockey one is always really, really good. And I don't know if it got more attention this year, but I know in the past couple years it has. But let's try to talk about how possibly the NBA can learn from the NFL, and maybe the other way around. Do you have any like thoughts just off the top of your head from this game?
Yeah, I think. I mean, one of the big things is that my brother was trying to talk about how this was in similar vein to a choke job of a 3-1 series, like blow up,
Right.
but it's really not because of the fact that there were 3 games that were won in a row for both the Cubs and the Cavs, or not the Cubs. Yeah, the Cubs.
Yeah, the
I
Cubs.
for some reason thought I said whatever the Cleveland one is. Anyways,
The Indians.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I for some reason thought I was saying that. Um,
Oh.
but like what the Cubs and the Cavs did was completely different than like a comeback and in like one game and scoring in overtime to win. and there being like nothing else. I think that's why there are a lot of people that like the NFL, is because everything's kind of decided in one game. But I think one of the great things about basketball is that normally the better team always wins, and that's
Right.
apparent when we have 7 game series, and you can kind of see the variance. And even the Super Bowl, you see it a lot. What was it? It was the year that it was Baltimore and the 49ers, and there was the power
Hmm.
outage during the Super Bowl.
Right.
And
One of the weirdest Super Bowls I've ever seen.
yeah, and it was one of those things where there's so much time during like halftime where guys just you aren't playing like halftime's an hour long or something, even know, but it's
Right.
so long that it ends up being a tale of two halves, because each half is like a different game, and you see that so often. In Super Bowl 43, I think it was, where it was Pittsburgh and Arizona. Um, Pittsburgh was dominating in the first half, and then the second half came along, and it became a really more even game because of. I just feel like because of the halftime gap, you're able to have a lot more rest, and it can really change things. And I think that's kind of the point um, of it as well. Is that like I don't know like if they did this originally like on purpose, but it seems like the extra spread out actually helps the team that's losing going into halftime more often than not.
It also brings up um, an interesting point. People talk about parity a lot within different leagues, like NFL versus NBA versus hockey or whatever. Um, and I think that's just a conversation that can always be had, especially when you have a game like this for the championship and it comes down to one game and the playoffs are like, the team, if the team that gets the bye in the first round goes to the Super Bowl, they play 3 games. That's not even enough to win one series in hockey or baseball or football, or sorry, basketball. Um, so that's kind of interesting, and the 16 game regular season. I mean, 16 games. Some NBA teams play that in a month. That's
There are skids
it's
where it's 16 games,
right.
and like that's a terrible skid most of the time, but like there are teams that'll have skids like that, and then like they keep on
Right.
chugging. I mean, a 16 game losing streak in baseball isn't really a big deal.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, okay, you don't ever want a baseball team to lose 16 in a row, but like it's not the end of the world if they do. Um, so I think about it, and I just think sometimes I think, wow, that's really cool that each game really means so much, and it doesn't matter whether it's week 1 or week 17 or what. Like you just have to win every single game you possibly can. Like that's cool. And guys don't take days off unless they have like a team has secured the playoff berth or whatever just to avoid injury. But then at the same time it's like there's so many flukes. There are so many flukes or like last second plays that make a certain team lose that probably should have won, and that can be really frustrating. It's like, in basketball, you lose to a team on a buzzer beating shot, say, and you're not happy about it, but you can look and say, oh well, we play those guys 3 more times this season, we'll have our chance to even up the series or whatever. So it's just interesting, but at the same time I think that's why football is so popular, is because all the games are on weekends. There's If you follow one team, there's one game a week you have to watch, so it's not very time consuming. You get a lot of excitement built up in that time. And then like things like the Red Zone channel where you can watch different games rotating all day long. The NBA can't really do the same thing because there's just way more games, and to be a die-hard fan and watch every game takes a lot of time, and we know that all too
Yeah.
well. So, especially when you're a fan of a bad team.
Yeah.
So it's I just see so many pros and cons to both sides, and I can never really decide which side I lean towards.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know. I mean, we talk about popularity. Football is still the most popular sport in the U.S.,
By far.
but
By far.
I think I mean, barring the Super Bowl or the big game or whatever you want to call it, so that way that there aren't any
Hmm.
copyright strikes. Um, the the entirety of the regular season was down by about 9%,
Right.
and I mean the playoffs, minus the Super Bowl, was down 6% from last year. So
And that's like really, really
that's
bad.
that's a solid chunk. When you
Hmm.
consider like the ratings or like how many millions of people watch it, 10% of a million is kind of a big deal.
Right.
So, um, you oh, I almost totally just lost my train of thought. But like, so football is slowly going down, and especially with, I think specifically they always say that millennials, the market, the umbrella term for all those darn young whippersnappers, the football is dropping more and more with millennials, and you could argue that that is probably due to the flag football nature of the sport in more than one ways, or one way. Flag football is, and you can't actually like hit them. Like back in the good old days where you could take someone's head off and play with a broken leg. Um, so like the hits are like way more specific now. Plus, there's flags everywhere and penalties. But
Hmm.
I like a combination of that and a 4-quarter game, 15 minutes a quarter takes 3 hours on a good day.
Right. Right. If you're lucky, it's three
Yeah,
hours.
and that's one of the things about like baseball can go forever. One of my biggest gripes with baseball, and I think that's another sport that like millennial wise, I'm gonna say that, but I'm just know that I'm saying that kind of ironically. Um, Drops
Hmm.
a lot because the games are so long, and
Right.
like you can go to a game and have fun. I love going to baseball games. I love getting some nachos, maybe a
Oh.
pretzel.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
that's
great.
great, but like watching those games on TV sometimes is rough.
It can be. Oh
Um,
yeah, for
and,
sure.
and like football has slowly started to become one of those things where there's just so many commercials and timeouts, and all right, we're gonna
Hmm.
have a commercial break after a touchdown, and then a kickoff, and then a commercial break, and then we'll have one play, but they have to call a timeout for this one reason, so we're gonna go back to a commercial break.
Right. Or they have to review a play, which takes forever.
Yeah,
I feel like there's more reviews now than ever. I don't know if there's data that lines up with that, but that's just what it feels like.
yeah, and another one of the big things is like with all the flags and everything, it seems like you really can't be excited for a play anymore
Right.
without looking
Right.
for a flag, and that's something that really with hockey, with baseball and basketball, you don't really have where something can't just be like returned. That basic like a play that takes 7-8 seconds can't really be completely just nullified in any of those three sports.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's a good point.
so I think that that kind of helps those three sports, specifically the fast-paced action of basketball and hockey. I think specifically, with just how and I mean hockey, a score, not a score, a game that's like normally really low scoring. So it seems like the shots and goals can still matter a lot more than I know a lot of people talk about basketball about how it's too high scoring and blah blah blah, and there's no contact and they don't watch basketball. But it's just one of those things that there's there's so much that is kind of shifting with football and how it's played, and that has really started to hinder some of the younger people trying to get into it, and how guys like Steph Curry and LeBron, who like go out there and just can destroy a single team, is a lot more fun to watch. And I mean, like some of these guys, like Cam Newton and like Russell Wilson, like can kind of do that with like some of their
Hmm.
moves and
Hmm.
why they're really popular with kids, but they're not going to go dismantle an entire team by themselves like night in after night, like night after night.
Right. Yeah, that's those are all really good points, and I just want to touch on a couple of them real quick. I think next season is going to be very interesting to see how the ratings of the NFL do, because everything I have read said that the election had a lot to do with that decline in rating, along with the other reasons you gave. So I'm interested in seeing how much the election really had an effect on those views.
Spoiler alert,
Um,
not really.
well, and the other thing I've seen is that the NFL is considering getting rid of a lot of commercials. And if they do that, I would be really interested in seeing what that does. I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I'm technically a millennial. I don't know how much I identify with that label, but whatever. Uh, when I watch football, I can watch my favorite team, the Super Bowl 50 champion Denver Broncos, nonstop, be engaged the whole time, no problem. But any other game, I just get so bored sometimes, especially if it's like, not the most exciting game, or if it's two teams I don't care a whole lot about. Like, I'll put it on in the background, or the Red Zone channel is great because it flips between all of the games. But like, I used to be able to get engaged with any game that was
Hmm.
on, but I'm just starting to have a hard time doing that with teams aside from my favorite team. And it's starting to be the opposite with basketball. Like, I'll turn the TV on, and whoever's playing that night on ESPN or TNT or whatever, I'll watch, whether it's the Suns or not. And I'll watch all the Suns games and all that, but I just find myself wanting to see, oh, let's see what the Warriors are doing tonight, or the Cavs, or let's see what Utah's doing tonight. Let's see what there's so many teams that are always playing games that you always have the opportunity to check out a different team playing on a different night. And the region restriction isn't as bad because we have TNT and ESPN and ABC sometimes showing those games. The other thing that I want to talk about is the streaming element. I think that's something with the NFL that people are doing, and I mean, I do this with the NBA too, is it's the condensed game thing where you can subscribe to a service for however much a month and rewatch all of the games without the commercials. And I know the NBA one takes out some plays and only shows like the most key plays, but I think the NFL version shows every play, just no commercials. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's what it is. And I think a lot of people are doing that because they don't want to sit down for 3 hours to watch a game when they know they can rewatch it in 30 minutes. So, I mean, I don't blame people at all for that. It's hard to commit that much time to watching a team. And this is coming from someone who hasn't missed watching a Broncos game since 2006.
Yeah, I totally feel you there. There was a stretch of 4 or 5 years where I would watch any game that was in front of me when it came to football, and it didn't matter who was playing. But I like it didn't matter how bad a team was or whatever. I would just watch it. But now, like ever since I don't know if it was last year or the year before that, and I mean it could be the product of just rooting for bad teams, like I always do. But like I mean it's just what it is. But I don't think it's as much that either. There's just something about just like unless I'm watching like a really strong like solid defense, I have a real hard time getting into games for some reason. Like and that might seem weird, but like I would much rather watch like a just defensive stomp down than any other game. Like, and like most of the time those end up being blowouts, but like I can watch those and just be like, man, this team's like tearing apart this other team, and like that's fine, like from the defensive standpoint, but like, and like you love watching like two high powered offenses go back to back or whatever, but unless like there like like there's some sort of like defensive making plays, like I just can't do it for some reason, and like I just can't like I can't watch these games where it's like, oh yeah, there are these two just incompetent offenses that are just going back to back and just throwing things away for 3 possessions and then punting it back. Like I can't do that anymore.
Right.
Like that's just the
No,
worst.
I get you. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I'm literally the exact opposite. And it's funny because the Broncos won the Super Bowl last year on the strength of their defense, which is great, and I love watching it. But like, I would much rather watch a game that the final score is like 52-50 or whatever. I love watching offense, and defense is just like painful. And I don't know if that's maybe like when I played football in high school, I always liked playing offense more. I was always into like scoring and that kind of thing. But I don't know. That's I've just always liked offense more. So
Yeah,
it's just funny that like we have these two completely opposite opinions, but are still feeling the same way about how these games are going.
yeah, and I don't really know what it is. I always feel like the difference makers for a team, like your difference makers need to be on your defensive end or your defense, the defensive side of the ball, not your defensive end. Although that kind of helps also, but
Yeah, yeah.
on the defensive side of the ball, if you're making plays on that end, then you have a really good shot to win a game. And I guess that's just kind of how I look. And like if the team that I'm watching like is a team that I absolutely hate and has a good defense, like I don't dig that. Like there are like 3 football teams where I'm just like, yeah, no, like these teams need to like all just disappear or like break up.
Like the Raiders.
Like yeah, like the Raiders, like the Patriots are one of those. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like I don't know like what that is, but like it's just because of my biases growing up. But like there's just something like when I like as much as like it also sucks to like see these dudes like hit each other and like cause severe brain damage. Like in the like game tonight, like because we're recording like right after like that pick six that Alford had for Atlanta, like
Yeah.
that
Uh-huh.
was awesome. And it just like that's just one of those plays where it's like, yeah, no, that should like be a difference maker in the game, but then the entire team
Right.
just lost all competency.
Yeah, you're right. And that play was amazing. That was really cool. But yeah, I know what you mean. Um okay, is there any way that this relates to the Phoenix Suns? Just right off the top of your head, really quick.
Yes,
Okay, let's hear
um, we need defense. No,
it. Well, yes.
no. You know there's a lot of relation, and I think with the NBA in general, that can learn so much from the NFL. Um, there has been talk about advertisements on jerseys a ton in the NBA right now.
Mm.
That's a really big
Mm-hmm.
deal. I think it's like GE or something is going to be on the Celtics, and like all
Right.
these different ones. I think that what the NBA can kind of learn is they can look at how like how to do commercials wrong. And I think that's something real big that the NFL has done the last couple of years, which is to try and just extort as much money as possible. And like the NBA isn't like any professional sports league isn't like completely free and void of doing that. But with the NBA, someone I read somewhere, I don't remember what it was, but was talking about how at least the like consistency of like when TV breaks are like, oh, it's going to be at this point, like this timeout in the first quarter, and
Mm-hmm.
this like commercial break, like after these this many minutes in the second, like how specific it is, and that you can kind of get into the rhythm of like when a game's going to go to a commercial break and when it's not. Um,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that really helps the NBA's in a whole, and like that's just one of those things that I think that if they keep on being consistent, that's gonna keep a lot of people around and continue to boost ratings a ton for the NBA, which I think just about almost every year it seems like there's some sort of um, huge like rating bump for like certain games and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's something that college ball does a really, really good job at too. You know, you have the under 16, under 12, under 8, under 4 media
Hmm.
timeouts. Like I will think, okay, I'm hungry. I need to eat dinner. Oh, there's 17 minutes left in the half. I'll wait 1 minute of game time and there'll be a foul or dead ball or whatever, and then I'll go make it. Like, I just love knowing that. But football is so much more unpredictable, you're right.
Yeah, and like some of that unpredictability is something that guys really like, and people, or not guys necessarily, people really like, and why
Yeah.
it's gotten so popular. And that's kind of the whole thing. The predictability of the NBA can turn some people off, um, and you
That's
talk
true.
about how like kind of the best team is kind of set in stone. Some people will argue, like at the beginning of the season, and like just
Right.
because of the amount of games where you can really feel how a team is going to perform. And then once it gets into the playoffs, because of the best of seven series, that you're really going to get a feel for how these teams really match up against each other and which is the actual better team. And like fluke wins aren't as much of a thing, and real big swings in momentum happen, but are able to carry between quarters and halftime a little bit more evenly, I think, than the NFL does.
Mm-hmm. I
And
agree.
maybe that's just me kind of making that up, but I don't think it is. I think that that's something that, like that consistency, I think is something that really goes in the favor of the NBA in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. The other thing I think that this game shows really well is that we talk a lot on this podcast, at least I have, about how people will complain that, oh, in the NBA, you only need to watch the fourth quarter, nothing else matters. Okay, in this game, you would tend to think that one would think, oh, yeah, the Patriots did it all in the fourth quarter. But, like, think about everything that got up to that point and put the Falcons in this great position they were in, and they just laid back, and the Patriots took full advantage of that. So it's like, I just think it shows maybe we see the Suns having a lot of bad quarters. Like maybe they have a bad second quarter where they only score 15 points, and whoever they're playing scores 30. It that doesn't help anything, and you dig yourself into a hole. But it's possible to come back from something like that, and that seems very simple, but it just goes to show that no one's ever really out of a game. The Super Bowl is especially different because of the scale that it's on, but I think it just, if people can look at a game as a whole and not just by one play, and that's something that I always say, especially with football, but with basketball a lot, is no game ever comes down to one play or one call, no matter what, even if it's a buzzer beating shot. Like, you have to look at all the other things that got a team to that specific point, got both teams to that specific point. And that's so many different things. So it never, like, this Super Bowl did not come down to the touchdown in overtime. If it came down to one specific play, like if you make me point something out, it's the coin toss in overtime, because the vast majority of the time, whoever wins the overtime coin toss, excuse me, usually wins the game. Like, I don't know the exact stats, but it's the majority of the time. But still, like, there's so much other stuff that goes into that, and I really, really hate to give the Patriots credit, and especially he who must not be named, but the quarterback of the team. Like, they did not give up, and they chipped away at that lead, and they did little things to get themselves back into it. If you compare it to basketball, it's like they went on a couple 10-2 runs or something like that in the third quarter to get themselves back into the game. And then when it came down to it, it was tied at the end of regulation and went into overtime, and they had all the momentum. That happens a lot in basketball too.
Yeah, and I mean, you can. Cockiness is a thing, and feeling like you have something wrapped up in the bag is definitely a thing as well. And you can see
Right.
these turning points. If a coach gets ejected to try and get their team fired up, that can be a turning point for that team as a way for them to wake up. But something else I want to kind of point out in like relation kind of to the Suns and what they can learn is
Yeah.
cohesiveness. Um,
That's good.
this Rome was not built in the day. Rome was not built in a day, is what I was trying to say. Um,
Neither was
Neither was
Roma.
Romo. Ooh, and he keeps falling, breaking down and down and down. Yeah, so Rome was not built in a day. You cannot build cohesiveness over a 3 game stretch because a 3 game stretch is going to be like a week. You have to look at how long it takes and how the Patriots have turned they were able to really win it first because of a dominant defense, and then Brady was able to progress so much where he was able to make his teammates better on the offensive end. And I think that's something that slowly some of our guys that possess the ball a lot will learn is something that they need to learn is that family atmosphere that Coach Watson always talks about. Well, even though it is a business in the NBA, and you always got to remember that the family atmosphere is using that to your advantage and wanting to go out there and make guys better, wanting to make Alan Williams better. I'm throwing out Big Sauce there just because, but like any of the bigs, any of the wings, any of that,
Right.
wanting to make the
Right.
guy next to you better, make them better, and I think that's something that these guys our guys on the Suns are going to learn is that as we progress and as we get better, as everyone develops more, we're going to be able to see how we can, or how they'll be able to see how they can make their teammates better, and that's something that's going to come with time, but something that there is never enough time to. There's never you can't ever learn it enough, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really, really good point. And actually, if you're cool with this, I think that's a great place to end,
I am
too.
so down
That
with
was very
that.
well said. Okay, yeah, we went about twice as long as we intended to. So I hope you enjoy our rambling. Tweet at us at Sunny and PHX Pod with all those Halloween costume ideas. Still want to hear those. Buy yourself a t-shirt. And we'll be back next week with a not Super Bowl related show. I can
Guarantee it.
guarantee that. But in the meantime, thanks for listening and go Suns.